Olympic Stadium was supposed to guarantee baseball's future in Montreal, a marvel of modern design, a promise to the city and the league. Instead, it became a concrete burden that helped erase the Expos from existence. Debt spiraled, players suffered, fans drifted away. Yet the stadium endures, hollow and unfinished, while the team it was meant to save is just a memory. How did a monument of hope become the site of one of baseball's quietest tragedies? Jarry Park was never supposed to be permanent. In the spring of 1969, construction crews worked through snow and freezing rain to transform a modest municipal field into a ballpark big enough for the major leagues. By opening day, the stands held just over 28,000 seats, squeezed into a patchwork of bleachers and grassy berms. Fans arrived bundled in heavy coats, hands wrapped around paper cups of coffee, breath visible in the cold April air as kids perched on the slopes behind the right field, chasing foul balls and rolling down the grass between innings. From the front row to the last, no one sat far from the action. The crack of a bat echoed across the neighborhood. Players could hear individual voices in the crowd, sometimes advice, sometimes heckling, always close. Jarry Park belonged to its surroundings. The Metro let fans off a short walk from the gates, and on game days the streets filled with the sounds of vendors, car horns, and the murmur of anticipation. The park's limitations were obvious. Bathrooms were scarce, concessions basic, and the wind off the outfield pond could cut through even the warmest jacket. But these quirks became part of the ritual. In the early years, more than 1 million fans came each season, drawn by the sense that baseball in Montreal was something shared and immediate. The Expos' first home run, Rusty Staub's line drive into the right field pond, became instant legend, and the team's orange and blue banners fluttered above a stadium that felt like an extension of the city itself. Longtime season ticket holders still recall the closeness. One remembers that you could see the players' faces, hear them talking in the dugout. It felt like you were part of the team. The park's size meant every cheer carried. Every disappointment was collective. There was no hiding in the crowd, even on the coldest April nights. When the wind whipped across the stands and the fielder's breath hung in the air, the energy never faded. Jarry Park was cramped and imperfect, but it was a thrive, a place where baseball felt local, accessible, and real. For many, those early seasons set the standard for what Montreal baseball could be, not grand or flawless, but warm, communal, and unmistakably close to home. Montreal's ambitions soared in the early 1970s. With the city awarded the 1976 Summer Olympics, Mayor Jean Drapeau and his team saw a chance to reshape the city's future and cement its place on the world stage. The plan was bold, not just to host the games, but to leave behind a lasting monument, a stadium that would rival any in North America and guarantee the Expos a permanent home worthy of the major leagues. The assignment fell to French architect Roger Taillibert, who envisioned something never before attempted in Canada. Rising above the city, his design called for an immense concrete bowl seating up to 60,000, crowned by a sloping 175-meter inclined tower. From that tower, a revolutionary retractable roof would stretch over the field, operated by a web of cables and pulleys, technology more common in science fiction than in stadium engineering of the era. The promise was a venue that could adapt to Montreal's harsh weather, sheltering baseball in April and October and dazzling the world during the Olympics. The roof was the project's spectacle. The stadium's role was always dual: Olympic showcase and baseball cathedral, a fusion meant to justify its size and cost for decades to come. For city leaders, combining the Expos of future with Olympic grandeur made the project seem practical and inevitable. The National League Expansion Committee had accepted Montreal's franchise in 1969 on the explicit promise of a dome stadium. Now, with Olympic funding and international attention, the city would deliver not just a ballpark, but a statement of confidence and modernity. Taylorbert's plans called for flowing lines, vast open spaces, and a structure that would dominate the skyline. The stadium would be more than a place to watch a game. It would be a symbol of Montreal's arrival as a global city and a guarantee that the Expos would never again have to make do with a temporary home. The retractable roof, in particular, was seen as the crown jewel, a technical marvel that would set Montreal apart from every other baseball city on the continent. But even as blueprints turned into concrete and steel, expectations grew heavier. Every promise of comfort, spectacle, permanence was measured against the city's pride and the Expos' future. The Olympic Stadium would become the Expos' destiny, for better or worse. The leap from Jarry Park's warmth to the cold grandeur of the Big O was underway, and there would be no turning back. Olympic Stadium's promise of grandeur came with a hidden cost. The moment fans stepped inside, the differences from Jarry Park were impossible to ignore. Seats stretched far from the field, the upper decks so distant that players looked like moving dots. The stadium's vast, bowl-shaped design swallowed up sound, leaving cheers to drift and die in the cold air. Even a crowd of 20,000 could feel lost in a building meant for 3 times that number. For many, the game felt detached, less a community event, more a spectacle viewed from afar. The roof, meant to be a marvel, quickly became a liability. For nearly a decade, there was no roof at all, just a concrete ring open to the elements. When the retractable structure finally arrived in 1986, it brought new headaches. In August 1986, a chunk of concrete fell from the tower onto the field before a scheduled Expos versus Padres game, forcing an immediate postponement and raising questions about the stadium's safety. The teams played a doubleheader the next day, but the sense of unease lingered. Problems multiplied as the years went on. The roof's fabric tore in high winds, jammed during operation, and proved unreliable in Montreal's brutal winters. In January 1991, heavy ice and snow caused a section of the roof to collapse, sending debris into the stands and closing the stadium for months. City officials imposed new restrictions, banning events if more than 3 centimeters of snow or freezing rain were forecast. Baseball games had to be rescheduled or moved, and each incident chipped away at public confidence. Those who worked behind the scenes remembered the constant scramble to patch leaks, clear ice, and reassure nervous fans. One longtime operations worker recalled that every spring they held their breath, never knowing if the roof would hold or if the next game would be called off. The uncertainty became part of the routine. The stadium's scale and technical failures did not just inconvenience fans, they undermined the very sense of security and excitement that big league baseball was supposed to bring to Montreal. Empty seats and safety fears became part of the experience, eroding the connection between the city and its team, one structural flaw at a time. Olympic Stadium's artificial turf looked bright and uniform from the stands, but up close it was a thin green carpet stretched over cold concrete. Players described the surface as unforgiving, hard on knees, ankles, and backs. Every slide, sprint, and sudden stop sent shock through their joints. Unlike the grass of Jarry Park, this was a field that punished bodies, not just tested them. Trainers like Ron McLean pleaded for a safer, thicker surface, but requests for upgrades were denied or delayed because of cost. The result was a reputation that spread across baseball. Montreal's field-shortened careers. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, the toll was visible. Outfielders like Andre Dawson and Larry Walker dealt with chronic knee pain, their careers shadowed by years of pounding on the turf. Visiting teams sometimes avoided full practices, choosing to save their legs for the game. Disabled list stints for leg and ankle injuries became routine, and the Expos' own staff quietly acknowledged that the stadium's surface was a factor in player health. Sports medicine studies from that era confirmed what players already knew, that artificial turf over concrete increased the risk of lower body injuries compared to natural grass. There was no give, no cushion, just a relentless pounding every time a player made a sharp turn or dove for a ball. As the Expos tried to compete for top talent, the turf became an invisible barrier. Free agents and their agents began to cross Montreal off their lists, not just over money, but out of fear for their knees and careers. The phrase poor playing conditions appeared in contract talks and player interviews, a quiet warning passed from locker room to locker room. The Expos' front office understood the cost. To keep stars, they would have to offer more money or accept shorter contracts if they could attract them at all. Payroll decisions became tangled with the stadium's reputation, forcing the team to weigh every signing against the risk that another season on the turf might end a player's career early. The field that was supposed to guarantee Montreal's baseball future instead pushed talent away, one aching joint at a time. Olympic Stadium's concrete shell did not just house the Expos, it became a monument to financial overreach. When construction delays and labor disputes sent costs soaring, Quebec's government turned to a new solution, a special tobacco tax introduced in 1976, dedicated to paying off Olympic debt. Every cigarette sold in the province sent a few extra cents into the Fonds Special Olympique, a fund meant to cover the stadium's bills. But the numbers refused to cooperate. The original projection for the Olympic facilities hovered around $134 million. By the time the final payments cleared in 2006, the total had ballooned to more than $1.6 billion. Interest, repairs, and an ever-growing list of maintenance emergencies kept the debt alive for 30 years, long after the Olympic flame had gone out and the Expos had moved in. For the city and province, the stadium became a burden, not a civic asset. Each year, millions of dollars in tobacco tax revenue disappeared into debt service, while the Société du Parc Olympique struggled to cover operating deficits. The stadium's maintenance alone cost millions annually, and the fixed expenses did not shrink when crowds did. Even in the Expos' best seasons, the building's scale meant that ticket sales and concessions could never keep pace with the bills. As the daily years passed, the phrase Big O replaced the stadium's original nickname, a reminder that the city was still paying for a monument that never delivered on its promises. When Expos ownership pleaded for upgrades, a new playing surface, modern amenities, or a more intimate ballpark, politicians balked. The public appetite for stadium spending had vanished. With the tobacco tax still siphoning away funds to pay old debts, there was no political will to finance a new baseball stadium or even a major overhaul of the existing one. The Expos were left to operate in a facility that was both too large to fill and too expensive to maintain, with no prospect of relief. The debt, once justified as a down payment on Montreal's sporting future, became a chain that kept the franchise from moving forward. In the end, the stadium's financial legacy proved as unyielding as its concrete walls. In the summer of 1994, hope surged through Montreal. The Expos were young, fast, and fearless, including Larry Walker, Moises Alou, Marquette Grissom, Pedro Martinez, and John Wetteland. By August, they held baseball's best record at 74 wins and 40 losses. Olympic Stadium, so often half empty and echoing, pulsed with life. Attendance soared. More than 1.6 million fans filled the seats, some nights pushing the building close to its limits. There was a sense, rare and unmistakable, that Montreal was on the verge of something lasting. The team's speed and swagger made believers out of skeptics. For once, the concrete bowl felt alive. Cheers bouncing off the walls, banners waving high in the outfield, vendors hustled down the aisles, faces painted blue and red as children clung to their parents and grown men clung to hope. Then on August 12th, everything stopped. The players' strike hit overnight, erasing the rest of the season and the playoffs. There was no pennant race, no October drama, no parade. The Expos' shot at a World Series so long in the making vanished. The stadium went silent. The financial blow landed hard. Without postseason games, the team lost millions in ticket sales, concessions, and broadcast revenue. Ownership, already squeezed by the building's fixed costs and thin margins, faced a sudden void. The city's belief in baseball, so recently revived, flickered and faded. When play resumed the next spring, the magic was gone. The core of the 1994 roster was dismantled, traded away, or let go as payroll was slashed. The Expos could not afford to keep their stars. The stadium's size, debt, and empty seats made it impossible to spend like a contender. Fans who had filled Olympic Stadium during that electric summer drifted away. The crowd shrank, the noise faded, and the sense of promise that once filled the city's landmark vanished with it. What had felt like a new beginning became, almost overnight, the start of the end. Upper decks vanished beneath the heavy tarps. Official capacity dropped to 46,000, but most nights, barely 7,000 or 8,000 fans dotted the lower bowl. Players described the silence as unsettling, their footsteps echoing in a space built for a city's roar. Stadium staff remembered entire sections closed off, concession stands shuttered, and escalators running for no one. One longtime usher remembered that you could walk 3 aisles and not see a soul. The emptiness became the defining feature, each game amplifying the sense of isolation. What once felt like a monument to hope now resembled a mausoleum, with every empty row a reminder of what had been lost. From 2003 to 2004, the Montreal Expos played 22 home games each season in San Juan, Puerto Rico, at Hiram Bithorn Stadium. Almost a quarter of their home schedule shifted more than 2,000 miles away. The move was designed to boost revenue and test new markets. But for fans in Montreal, it felt like a rehearsal for departure. Attendance in San Juan often doubled what the Expos drew at Olympic Stadium, with crowds in the mid-teens and opening nights topping 20,000. Meanwhile, the stadium in Montreal grew quieter, its empty seats becoming a fixture. On September 29, 2004, as more than 30,000 fans gathered for the Expos' final home game, Major League Baseball owners voted to approve the franchise's relocation to Washington, D.C. The promise was a modern, baseball-only park and a fresh start far from the concrete shell that had become an anchor. For Montreal, the loss was official and irreversible. Today, Olympic Stadium still casts its shadow over Montreal, an unfinished monument to promise and loss. As new cities chase stadium deals and public dollars, the lesson endures. Buildings cannot manufacture loyalty or community. The cost of getting it wrong is measured not just in money, but in memories erased. Montreal's skyline keeps the reminder long after the cheers are gone. What would you do differently? Share your thoughts below.